Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today I'm sharing my thoughts on the Gundam Evolution Open Network Test. Or just Gundam Evolution in general since I've got to play it a little bit. I've got some overall thoughts, then I'll try to break down each suit. I tried to play all of them so I'd give you at least some idea of how they worked and how well they worked. Now, overall, pretty fun actually. This has been something I've found myself popping in, playing a match or two because they don't last super long. If you've got like 30 minutes of weird space, it's great for that. I could see people being competitive, and this is something that, since Bandai's trying to push it as part of its big esports push, could work. I don't think it's gonna be like League or Dota or anything that like gets real big, but I do think that, yeah, I mean, PUBG still has like regular tournaments. This can have tournaments. This could be fairly popular. It's easily accessible. Sure, it's technically like in concept like an Overwatch clone, but it's a hero shooter. It's kind of basic though. And I think this will be the esports option. Gundam Battle Operation 2, well, fun in its own right, I don't think has the same competitive ability here. I could be wrong. I've not played a ton of Gundam Battle Operation 2, and what I have played I've been pretty terrible at, because I'm kind of a terrible gamer. So take that, as a grain, take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I think this one would attract not only a more casual audience, but also just a bigger audience in general. As you really don't need to know a lot of what the Gundams do, or any of the mechs in it, so you've never really need to touch Gundam. So I think a lot of people that build kits that have never watched a show or have kind of fallen off some shows would probably be able to jump into this pretty easily. Now, I think, and this is, still early. This is the open network, or the the network tests, open network test, beta test, whatever you want to call it. It's still early. It's not a full release yet. So some of this may change. I kind of hope it does because it feels a little bare. The game modes, those are fine. You don't need a lot of those. 2 or 3, and I think there's 2, maybe 3 in there, I think. And they work pretty well. There's not a problem with that. The variety needs to come in suit and maps. Suits, I can definitely see. Maps, because a lot of the maps have the same problems. So, in terms of maps, there's not a lot of big open spaces, so your long-range support units kind of become pointless. Not entirely. There are still a few good positions on each map, but usually they're not far enough away that unless you have a good partner around with you to help kind of shield you, you're going to get wrecked, unfortunately. Mostly the GM Sniper too. The Guntank has a little bit better close range ability, but still not a lot. And the Turn A kind of has some close-in fight ability, but it's really not good either. But it's still pretty much, I think, better than the GM Sniper 2. That's just me. The GM Sniper 2, however, if you can hit shots, is strong. The problem is a lot of the maps do not give you good positioning to do that, so kind of think about that. I would love to see some more big open maps, but they'll probably relegate most of those to GBO2. Instead, they'll probably have a lot of close indoors, close quarters type stuff, because most of the suits are more beneficial in those instances. But in terms of suit variety, this is something I want you guys to let me know in the comments below, because I've been thinking about it like nonstop since I've been playing. The rosters are probably, of course, going to change and maybe get some additions before it comes out or shortly thereafter. But I think there are a lot of things that could be added. And initially I was thinking, some more close range suits would be good because you only really have the Barbados and Exia. So like G Gundam stuff came to mind, of course. That was like the first thing. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what that thing is. But like there's a lot of different variations on things I think would be pretty good in this game. Whether we see them all or not, it's hard to say. But let me know. How do you guys think some of these suits would be implemented, and what suits do you want to see? Like I said, I've been thinking about it, and if you guys want a video of me just kind of rambling about that and just spitting thoughts, I'd be more than happy to do that, because like I said, I have a lot of them. But let me know in the comments, because this is a conversation I've been wanting to have with people. Now, In terms of the individual suits, I tried to play all of them so that I got at least some vibes, and I'll go kind of through my shorthand on each one, and I tried to get some gameplay for some of them, but I also didn't want to embarrass myself, so take that as you will. But starting with the Dom Trooper, which is probably the one I played, maybe not the most, but pretty high up there. It's good. Its movement's fairly quick. I think it could probably use an extra boost bar, because that kind of plays up to its whole point of it being kind of this fast-moving thing, because it has like the hover gimmick, so it does generally move a little faster than walking, but at the same time, it's limited in terms, I think it's like a 2 boost, so you don't really get to keep up with some of the faster things, like the Exia, the Barbados, even like the flying suits like the Ashmar and the Methuss would kind of outpace you in most instances. But its weapons feel super weak. The splash damage and just the damage in general on the bazooka is kind of inconsequential. It does damage, but as slow as the fire rate is and as small as the AoEs on it, it's not going to do a lot. So more splash damage, a little bit more impact there. The beam's pretty good. I'd like it to last just a little longer because it's very short, but it does good damage, so I could see why they'd leave it there. Kind of works as a decent semi-support thing because you do also kind of have a little bit of a boost type property. Like you can shoot people on your team with a boost, but it doesn't last super long, so it's really, you need to be up on the front, kind of providing that and giving your team the edge in those close-up fights. The GM is a good starter. The shield is super strong. Like, if you like, the whole cover shooting aspect of this really helps because you can carry your cover with you, and it's one of the few units that gets to use its shield. Shield adds a lot of extra life to it. The beam spray gun's kind of, once again, inconsequential, but that's kind of what you'd think. It's not supposed to be as big super weapon, so it does damage, but you're going to need to land a fair amount of shots before you're really going to down anyone. And with a lot of the chaos, it gets a little difficult to do that. Outside of that, it's pretty okay. You get a detonate, like, bomb thing, but it doesn't... I'm sure if you practiced with it and got good with it, it would be fine, but it just doesn't... Like, the range of throwing it and the area effect on it, splash damage on it, it's just not good. It's okay, but like I said, it's hard to hit anything because it doesn't explode on impact. It's a detonation. And if you freak out and hit it while you're trying to retreat, you're not going to have time to hit it again for it to explode before your enemy's over it. So, could be better, but I can understand trying to add some of these abilities. Maybe it was a little difficult. GM Sniper 2. As I said, maps are not a friend to it. You can do okay with it, but you're usually not going to end up on the MVP screen. Most of the time, your MVP screen is going to be like a mid-range, usually like a Sazabi, and then your Barbies or your Exias are going to end up on there as well. I've seen a few people do it, though, so it is possible, but you don't have a great close-in thing, and the maps aren't your friend for your long-range shots, and unless you hit a headshot, you're really going to need to land like 3 shots body to do enough damage to at least disable, if not destroy, a mobile suit. And that is a gimmick I kind of didn't talk about. You don't usually initially die. You get disabled so that your team can come repair you so that you can get back in the fight. However, you don't get the option to move, so wherever you get disabled is usually in the line of fire of where you're already getting shot from. So sometimes your team can heal you, but it's kind of a rarity. Like, revives are not very common in this game that I've seen so far. Barbados, good. Yeah, I'm terrible with it, but if you're a good rushdown player, if you all those Genji mains out there are going to like this. Run in, beat it up. Its ult's kind of weak. And I mean, not actually weak, but it's just one big slash, basically. So you really need to like have a few people lined up, and you don't really get to maneuver a lot with it. So keep that in mind. I think a lot of the ults will probably need to be reworked a little in terms of like balancing, because a lot of them are kind of worthless. Not worthless, but they're not ults, right? They're not your ultimate attack. They're kind of weak. Gramps is probably one of the best starters and best all-around suits. The beam rifle does a fair amount of damage, but it has a slow fire rate, so it kind of keeps you in check. You can use the shield, but you can't fire the beam rifle with the shield at the same time. And the Gundam hammer does do some stun damage. which is good, but you usually don't have a fast enough turnaround to whip the beam rifle out and get a shot off. So take that as you will. Super Napalm is pretty effective and has a big radius. I think it's probably the strongest ult that I can think of outside of the Sazabi's funnels. It's real strong. But it is something like if you put it on a point that a team's trying to cap, you're going to do a lot of damage. Otherwise, And that's kind of the way most of these ults go. That's kind of sad, but it's true. Zaku is also a good starter. It's not going to give you as much health, but the machine gun, I feel like, does more damage than the beam spray gun, so take that as you will. It's also rapid fire, but still a controllable fire rate, so it's, I think, a little better than the beam rifle, in my opinion. I've noticed the actual physical munitions are better than the beam rifles. Like this, the Pale Rider's machine gun, its bullpup, and then the GM Sniper 2 all hit pretty hard, so that's cool. The Crackle Grenade does fine. It's not really area of denial, but it does push people, so you kind of have that aspect, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Zaku's pretty good in this game. Anyway, Sazabi, also good. It's very tanky. It's kind of slow. The shotgun does a lot of damage up close, but once you get to a distance, it kind of gets not great. You do have a cool rushdown kind of thing. You have a attack, basically, that lets you rush down on an opponent from a pretty good distance if you see them. Like, you see them, you hit the button, you rush to them. You don't have to do anything else, and it doesn't use your boost meter, at least to a large extent. I don't think it does to any extent, but I could be wrong. If it does, it's very minimal because you can usually move fairly quickly when you're there. Then you also have your Beam Tomahawk throw, which you can also use as a point to rush forward. So it's pretty strong. And then, of course, its ult with all of the funnels is phenomenal. Like, it's killing it. Probably the strongest one. A lot of the passive ones tend to be a lot better because there are not a lot of active ones, and the ones that are active are not great. Or they're at least harder to hit. So kind of take that as you will. The Ashmar, actually pretty good. The flying is a little weird to get used to, but it's actually really solid. And if you want the fast one, this is it. This is going to get you back in the fight a lot quicker than anything else, even the Exia and Barbados. The flying is really good, and the beam rifle works okay. It's a 3-round burst, does a decent amount of damage. You can do your alternative fire is like a charge shot type situation, does a decent amount of damage. You have a napalm grenade, which is pretty solid as well. You have a pretty good distance you can throw it. So Ashmar, maybe not my main if when I continue to play this, but it is one I'll probably come back to because it is actually quite a bit of fun. Exia I did slightly better with than the Barbie, but not much. It's kind of weird, some of the things they picked for these. The Exia doesn't get its beam rifle. It has its beam knives. You get to throw those. Unlimited number of times. That's fine. They don't do a ton of damage. You're really not supposed to be using them as your main weapon anyway. Your slashes do a fair amount of damage. They don't really do enough stun, though. I feel like at least one of the slashing attacks should do enough stun damage to lock up someone for a little bit. A couple of seconds so that you can kind of get back and get something recharged by the time they're back in combat. Because all of these special attacks that aren't base, the Ashmar's regular beam rifle shots, the Sazabi's beam shotgun, you have to reload them, but they don't have a cooldown. Your special attacks do, as you would expect from an Overwatch clone. But some of them I feel like probably need to be rebalanced a little because they're a little long, like the Exias. Like I said, I didn't see it as on many MVP screens as the Barbie, but it's still pretty good. Rush down and mid-range stuff has a lot more advantage in most of these maps because they're all mostly close, compact areas. So anyone that's in there and doing stuff is going to do pretty well. Marasai, I'm either terrible or this is just not a good pick. I've got some gameplay for it, and it's bad. You can use some of the combo stuff to work a little better. I think in terms of synergy, it's probably one of the better ones, but it's just not great. The beam rifle's kind of garbage. Like, you have a zoomed in shot, but it still doesn't hit, and it doesn't fire fast enough to really do a lot. And its damage is fairly it's not inconsequential, but it's not as high as it should be for the weapon it is. You do have like a beam stab with it, and you have your little like hook thing to grab and pull. Use the grab and pull, do the beam saber stab, fall back and shoot is a good option, but it's hard to pull off. So I'm sure there's probably someone who's going to main the Marasai out there, but it's not me. Pale Rider, probably, if not the best starter, one of the better ones. I think it's probably on par if you like to be aggressive with the Zaku, with one caveat that I think makes it better. It is not only close to mid-range, it's also a support unit. So you have a healing thing, which is almost as good as the Methuss in terms of healing. I think better because it's stationary, and if you're kind of pinned down with a couple people, it heals them too. So you kind of have that going on, which is good. The bullpup machine gun's really strong. If you do the zoomed in shot, it's really accurate. Your grenades are okay. I would say they're probably not going to be your main weapon. Obviously not your main weapon, but they're not going to be the thing you're turning to do damage. It's that bullpup machine gun, which I wouldn't be surprised if it gets nerfed because it's pretty solid. Oddly enough, didn't see a lot of Pale Riders on the MVP screen. Its survivability is good, but I guess its health isn't super high, so that's probably why it loses out to the Sazabi, because the Sazabi is a beast. It takes a lot of damage. Turn A, it's alright. Beam rifle's kind of slow. If it hits, it does a decent amount of damage. It's kind of your mid-range sniper. It's okay. It's like throw things alright. It's okay. If it gets rebalanced, I think it would be better, but it's not something that I'm like, oh, I gotta do this. This is the one I'm going for now. It's just not really selling me on it. Guntank, actually pretty solid. The big cannons, I still don't 100% understand. They're okay, but like this is probably, if not the strongest, like the top 3 strongest main weapons that you get with like the little fist machine gun rocket pod things. They do good. Those like are, I think, the only weapon you actively can target multiple people with and have kind of like a lock-on thing going on and do that much damage. It's phenomenal. I love this thing. Big and slow though, so take that as a grain of salt. You're gonna probably need to move fairly quickly, and you do have a boost, so that's good. So you can move back out, or you can move in a different direction, only forward though. And its health's not super high because it's supposed to be long range fire support, but the cannons suck. So yeah, but like I said, a lot of this is not final, so some of this will probably change. And the Methuss, actually pretty strong. If you're a good support player, you're gonna like the Methuss. You do have to follow people around, and you're not the fastest. I think this probably could use a bit of a speed boost, especially if you're trying to follow like a Barbados or an Exia. You're gonna get left behind. You do have a transformation thing, so you do have that option. Its guns are okay. It gets a turret. It's kind of like a, can't remember the turret guy from Overwatch's name. It's kind of like him with a healing thing. So you get that. The turrets are really more there as an annoyance, but they work okay. And then you get a big shot, which does a fair amount of damage and has longer range, so that's pretty cool. But overall, as I said at the beginning, it's fun. Is it perfect? Is it going to be the next big explosion in esports? No. But it's fun, it's enjoyable, and I think it'll have a place in esports, but it's not going to be the number 1 or probably even the number 2 or 3 thing. Bandai could push it, maybe they can and get it there, but if things kind of continue down the path, even with improvements, I think it's, it'll be in like the top 10 of your esports games, probably, maybe, at least in kind of the shootery genre, or hero shootery, or any of that stuff. But, it works. It's there. It's serviceable. I think when they add more stuff to it, it'll be better. But let me know in the comments down below if you got to play it. How did you fare? What do you think about my breakdown of some of these? Do you think you'll be playing it anymore? And did you just generally have fun? Anyway, I've been the Spicer here for the Gunpla Network. Please stay safe and keep on building.